The Galactic Council Chamber was a massive structure floating in the void between stars. It had existed for 10,000 years, a symbol of power and order. Inside its gleaming walls, 7 species made decisions that affected billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. They called themselves the Elder Races, the founders of civilization, the keepers of peace. The Vorath were insect-like creatures who controlled all trade and commerce. Their compound eyes saw everything, or so they believed. The Kelshur resembled living crystals, obsessed with genetic perfection and purity. The Dramathi lived in water-filled chambers, their minds calculating strategies decades in advance. The Zulak were massive reptilian warriors who commanded the Council's military forces. The Fenari were bird-like diplomats with voices that could charm or condemn. The Korvax were silicon-based beings who ran the industrial sectors. And the Theln were telepaths who administered the vast bureaucracy that kept everything running. 200 years ago, they discovered Earth. The humans who lived there were new to space travel, eager and full of hope. Ambassador Peter Grant led the first human delegation to the council chambers. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. Beside him stood Commander Kate Morrison, a sharp military officer, and Chief Engineer Danny Walsh, who was amazed by the technology around them. Peter spoke to the council with respect and optimism. He offered friendship, trade, and cooperation. He showed them human art, music, and scientific discoveries. He promised that humanity would be good members of the galactic community. The humans wanted to learn, to grow, to be part of something larger than themselves. The council listened, then made their decision. Humanity would be accepted, but only as a probationary species. They would have no voting rights. Their military would be limited to small defensive ships. Their colonies would be watched constantly. Their trade would be taxed heavily. The council declared that humans were too aggressive, too emotional, and too unpredictable to be trusted with full membership. Peter tried to argue. He explained that humans had overcome their violent past, that they had unified their world, that they were ready to contribute. The council members barely listened. The Vorath speaker waved a claw dismissively. The decision was final. Humanity could accept these terms or leave galactic space entirely. The humans accepted. They had no choice. They were one small world against an empire of thousands. Peter signed the documents with a heavy heart, knowing his people deserved better but hoping to prove themselves over time. And prove themselves they did. Humans threw themselves into every task the council gave them. They operated supply routes through dangerous asteroid fields where other species refused to go. Captain Jake Cooper spent 30 years flying the transport vessel Endeavour, delivering food and medicine to remote outposts. He never complained even when the pay was poor and the risks were high. Humans built space stations in hazardous zones. They maintained the relay networks that kept communication flowing across the galaxy. They worked as technicians, engineers, doctors, and laborers. Engineer Marco Santos could fix any machine, often improving it beyond its original design. Dr. Nina Clark ran medical clinics on alien worlds, treating diseases that council physicians found too difficult or beneath their status. When pirates raided the outer sectors, it was human militia forces who responded. The council's mighty Zulak military considered such threats too minor for their attention. But humans like Greg Nelson, a former soldier turned farmer, would grab his old rifle and defend neighboring colonies without being asked. The council barely noticed these contributions. To them, humans were servants doing servant work. The elder species had ruled for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to struggle, to work with their own hands, to do the jobs that kept civilization running. They sat in their comfortable chambers and made laws while humans kept the machinery of their empire functioning. Years turned into decades. The initial optimism faded from human faces. Peter Grant grew old serving as ambassador, watching his people work themselves to exhaustion for species that barely acknowledged their existence. Young humans were born into a galaxy where they were second-class citizens by law. They asked their parents why they were treated this way. The parents had no good answers. Kate Morrison rose through the limited ranks allowed to humans, commanding small patrol ships on the frontier. She saw how the council's neglect led to suffering on border worlds. She filed reports that were never read. She requested support that never came. She learned to rely only on other humans because no one else cared. Danny Walsh spent decades maintaining the massive fusion reactors that powered council worlds. He trained alien engineers, but they never stayed long. The work was hard and offered little glory. So Danny and thousands of humans like him kept the reactors running, year after year, keeping the lights on for species that looked down on them. The council held ceremonies celebrating 10,000 years of peace and prosperity. They gave speeches about unity and cooperation. They praised themselves for their wisdom and leadership. Humans served drinks at these ceremonies and cleaned up afterward. No one invited them to speak. No one asked their opinions. No one seemed to realize that without human hands, their perfect civilization would crumble. Station Chief Wayne Foster managed the Tertius Relay Station, a critical communications hub connecting dozens of systems. He worked 16-hour days with a small crew, keeping signals flowing while council bureaucrats took credit for the network's reliability. Wayne never expected thanks. He just did his job because someone had to. Supervisor Paul Harris led mining teams in the Keldon Belt, extracting rare minerals in conditions so dangerous that other species refused the work. Men and women died in those mines. Their families received small compensation and no recognition. But the minerals kept flowing to council factories, keeping the mighty industrial machine running. This was life for humanity in the galaxy. They had joined the stars seeking wonder and finding only endless work and casual contempt. They stayed because they had nowhere else to go. They endured because they hoped things would eventually change. They believed that if they just worked hard enough, long enough, proved themselves enough, the council would finally see their worth. They were wrong. The council would never see them as equals. But that painful lesson was still to come. Written in blood and fire on a colony world called New Denver, everything was about to change, though no one knew it yet. The humans kept working. The council kept ignoring them, and the galaxy turned toward a future that would shatter 10,000 years of stability. The stage was set for humanity's breaking point. New Denver was supposed to be a fresh start. The colony sat on a beautiful world with blue oceans and green forests. 3 million humans called it home. Farmers grew crops in rich soil. Children went to schools and played in parks. Families built houses and dreamed of the future. It was far from Earth, out on the frontier, but people felt safe. They believed the Galactic Council protected them. Commander Lisa Hayes ran the colony's defense force. She was a career military officer, efficient and careful. Her fleet consisted of 12 small patrol ships and a few orbital defense platforms. It was not much, but the Council had strict limits on human military assets. Lisa did her best with what she had. She ran drills and kept her people sharp. She hoped they would never need to fight. That hope died on a cold morning when the sensors lit up with incoming signals. Pirates. Not just a few raiders, but an entire coalition fleet. Over 200 ships of various sizes, all armed and hungry for plunder. Lisa's blood ran cold. Her 12 ships could not stop such a force. The orbital platforms would buy some time, but not much. She immediately sent distress calls to every council military outpost within range. She contacted the Vorath trade stations, the Zulak battle groups, the council emergency response teams. She explained the situation clearly. 3 million civilians were about to be attacked. She needed help. She needed it now. The responses came slowly. The Vorath said they had no available ships. Their traders were busy with important cargo runs. The Zulak commander reviewed her request and declared that New Denver was not strategically significant. Losing it would not affect council security. The Kelshir refused to send their fleet, stating that defending lesser species would create a bad precedent. Other council members simply ignored the calls. Lisa could not believe what she was hearing. She sent more messages, more urgent each time. She begged. She pleaded. She explained that millions of people were going to die. The council had the power to save them. They just needed to send help. The nearest Zulak battle group was only 6 hours away. They could reach New Denver before the pirates broke through the defenses. The Zulak commander said no. His ships were scheduled for training exercises. Those exercises were more important than some human colony built in an unapproved sector. Lisa wanted to scream. New Denver had been built with council permission. The paperwork had been filed and approved. But the commander did not care about paperwork. He ended the communication. The pirate fleet arrived. Lisa ordered her ships to engage. The pilots fought bravely. They destroyed 3 pirate vessels before being overwhelmed. The orbital platforms fired until their power cores melted. They took down 8 more enemy ships. But it was not enough. The pirates landed troops on New Denver's surface. Greg Nelson was 57 years old. He had served in the human militia during the border conflicts 30 years ago, then retired to farm on New Denver. He was tending his wheat fields when the attack sirens sounded. He looked up and saw ships burning in orbit. He ran to his house, grabbed his old rifle from the closet, and drove toward town. Others did the same. Farmers, shopkeepers, teachers, anyone who could hold a weapon. They had no real military training. They had no heavy weapons or armor. But they had something else. They had rage. The galaxy had abandoned them, so they would fight alone. Amy Ross was a school teacher. She had no combat experience, but she knew first aid, so she turned the school gymnasium into a medical station. Children huddled in the basement while Amy and other volunteers treated wounded militia members. The supplies ran out quickly. Amy used torn sheets for bandages and alcohol for disinfectant. People screamed in pain. She kept working. The fighting lasted 3 days. The pirates had numbers and better weapons. The humans had desperation and home ground advantage. Greg Nelson's militia held downtown for 36 hours, fighting from building to building. They made the pirates pay for every street, but eventually ammunition ran low. Medical supplies were gone. The defenders were exhausted. The pirates broke through. They rounded up survivors and began loading them onto slave ships. They looted everything valuable. They burned buildings for sport. They executed anyone who looked like they might cause trouble. 400,000 humans died in the fighting or the massacres that followed. Admiral Carl Burton received word of the attack while commanding a small human fleet 2 systems away. He was an older man, tough as steel and twice as stubborn. He gathered every human ship within reach. Civilian transports, cargo haulers, mining vessels, anything that could fly. They armed them with whatever weapons they could mount. It took 2 days to organize the rescue fleet. They arrived too late. The pirate fleet was leaving, their holds full of slaves and stolen goods. Carl ordered his ships to attack. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but fury drove them forward. The battle was brutal. Carl's flagship, the frigate Liberty, took heavy damage but kept fighting. The civilian ships rammed pirate vessels when their weapons failed. The pirates had not expected such ferocity. They had raided many worlds and faced many defenders, but never anyone who fought like cornered animals. Carl's fleet destroyed them completely. Not one pirate ship escaped. But it was a bitter victory. 400,000 people were already dead. Carl could only rescue 50,000 survivors from the slave ships. Lisa Hayes was among the survivors. Her face was burned, her arm broken, but she lived. Greg Nelson died holding the town square, his rifle empty, surrounded by bodies. Amy Ross survived but lost her voice from screaming. The refugees loaded onto Carl's ships in silence. They had nothing left. Their homes were ashes. Their families were gone. The galaxy had watched them die. The news spread quickly. Every human world received reports of the massacre. Images of burning cities and mass graves filled the communication networks. People were horrified. Then they were angry. Then they demanded justice. Peter Grant, now very old and tired, called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. He stood before the 7 elder species and presented the evidence. He showed the distress calls that were ignored. He displayed the response times that proved help could have arrived. He listed the names of the dead, reading them slowly so the council could not ignore the scale of what had happened. Then he demanded answers. Why had help been refused? Why had New Denver been abandoned? Why had 400,000 humans died when the council had the power to save them? The council members shifted uncomfortably. Finally, the Vorath speaker responded. New Denver had been built in an unapproved sector, he said. The colony did not follow proper protocols. The council had no obligation to defend it. These things happened on the frontier. Humanity should take it as a learning experience. Peter stared at the Vorath for a long moment. His hands shook, but his voice stayed steady. He asked if the speaker had read the approval documents. The Vorath admitted he had not. Peter asked if anyone on the council had reviewed the case. Silence answered him. The Kelshir representative added that humanity needed to learn their place in galactic society. They should focus on their assigned roles rather than overextending into dangerous regions. If they stayed where they belonged, such tragedies could be avoided. Peter stood there looking at each council member. These beings had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had built an empire of laws and order, and they did not care that 400,000 humans had died screaming for help that never came. They saw it as a minor inconvenience, a lesson about knowing one's place. Peter Grant spoke 5 words that would echo through history. Very well. We understand perfectly. Then he turned and walked out of the council chamber. His staff followed him. Behind them, the council members discussed other business. They did not realize they had just destroyed their empire. The orders came quietly. No speeches, no declarations, no angry messages broadcast across the galaxy. President Helen Brooks, leading Earth's unified government, sent encrypted communications to every human settlement, station, and ship. The message was simple: come home. Bring nothing that belongs to the council. Leave everything functioning. Tell no one. Just leave. Marco Santos was repairing a power relay on a Vorath trade station when he received his orders. He was a good engineer, maybe the best the station had. He finished his current task, sealed his tools in their case, and clocked out for his shift. He told his supervisor he was taking personal leave. The Vorath barely looked up from his paperwork. Marco walked to the docking bay, boarded a human transport, and left. He never came back. It happened across the galaxy. Human technicians stopped reporting for work. Human doctors closed their clinics. Human teachers finished their classes and disappeared. At first, the council members barely noticed. Workers took leave sometimes. They would be back. But they did not come back. And as days turned into weeks, the absences multiplied. Dr. Nina Clark had run a medical facility on a Fenari colony world for 15 years. She treated diseases that Fenari doctors could not cure. When she left, she took her staff of 30 human physicians and nurses. The clinic building stood empty. Sick Fenari waited for doctors who would never arrive. Captain Jake Cooper made his final supply run to Threshold Station, a remote science outpost studying cosmic radiation. He delivered 6 months of food, medicine, and equipment. The alien scientists thanked him casually, like they had hundreds of times before. Jake smiled and said goodbye. As his ship pulled away, he transmitted a short message. "This is our last delivery. Good luck." The scientists did not understand. Last delivery? The supply runs came every 3 months. They had come for decades. Why would they stop? They tried to contact the shipping company. No one answered. They tried to hire new transport crews. No humans accepted the contracts. Only then did the scientists realize they were alone on a station surrounded by deadly radiation, with supplies that would last 6 months if they were careful. Wayne Foster managed the Tertius relay station. It was a critical communications hub connecting dozens of systems. Without it, real-time communication across that sector would be impossible. Wayne had worked there for 22 years. He knew every circuit, every backup system, every quirk of the aging equipment. When his orders came, he gathered his crew of 48 humans. They shut down non-essential systems, set the automated protocols, and evacuated. The station went dark 3 days later when a minor fault cascaded into major failures. No one was there to fix it. Human colonies began packing up. Families loaded belongings onto ships. Farmers abandoned their fields mid-season. Merchants closed their shops. Station chiefs organized orderly evacuations. Everything human-made that could move began moving toward the outer rim, away from council space. The council finally noticed. This was not people taking leave. This was a mass exodus. Vorath trade administrators sent messages demanding explanations. The messages went unanswered. Zulak military officers ordered human vessels to stop and return. The human ships ignored the orders and kept flying. Peter Grant submitted humanity's formal withdrawal from the Galactic Council. It was a simple document, officially notifying the Council that humanity was severing all agreements and treaties. Peter attached a brief personal statement. "We came in friendship and received contempt. We worked faithfully and received exploitation. We bled for this galaxy and received scorn. We will not make the mistake of seeking your approval again. Humanity is leaving. Do not follow us." The Council convened an emergency session. The members were confused and angry. The Vorath wanted to know who would maintain the trade routes. The Korvax demanded to know who would work the dangerous mining operations. The Dramathi calculated supply chain disruptions and did not like the numbers. The Zulak suggested using military force to stop the humans from leaving. That suggestion caused heated debate. The Thelon pointed out that humans had the right to leave. The Fenari argued that forcing them to stay would make things worse. The Kelshir said they should let the humans go. Lesser species were replaceable. The council could find others to do the work. But privately, some council members were worried. The Thelon tried using telepathy to understand human intentions. They found human minds suddenly closed off, protected by some kind of mental shielding humanity had developed in secret. That was concerning. What else had humans been hiding? Paul Harris had supervised mining in the Keldon Belt for 18 years. The work was incredibly dangerous. The asteroids contained valuable minerals but were unstable and prone to collapse. Other species refused to work there. The pay was too low for the risk. But humans did it anyway because they needed the jobs. Paul led teams of miners who extracted tons of rare materials every month. When the evacuation orders came, Paul pulled everyone out. The mining equipment sat abandoned, still running but unattended. Within weeks, several automated systems failed. The mines became death traps. No one went near them. The evacuation continued. Admiral Carl Burton organized the military aspects, coordinating hundreds of civilian vessels. Commander Lisa Hayes, still recovering from her injuries at New Denver, helped plan routes that avoided Council patrol zones. The humans did not want confrontation. They just wanted to leave. Some alien observers wondered where humanity was going. The human fleet headed toward the outer rim, into regions the Council considered worthless. Those areas were marked as too dangerous, too remote, or too lacking in resources. The Council had surveyed them centuries ago and found nothing of value. Why would humans go there? The humans did not explain. They just kept flying, ship after ship, station after station, colony after colony, an entire species pulling up roots and vanishing into the dark spaces between Council territory and the galactic edge. Tyler Adams was a freight captain who had hauled cargo for the Council for 30 years. He knew every route, every shortcut, every safe harbor. He had friends on a dozen alien worlds, but when his orders came, he abandoned his contracts mid-delivery. Cargo sat undelivered in his hold as he flew toward the rendezvous point where human fleets were gathering. He felt bad for the clients expecting their goods, but he felt worse about New Denver. His sister had died there. His nephews had died there. The Council had let them die. Tyler owed the Council nothing. Within a year, the human presence in Council space had almost completely vanished. A few diplomats remained to handle final legal matters. A few volunteers stayed behind to help transition critical systems to Council workers. But the vast majority of humanity was gone. Over 8 billion people, thousands of ships, hundreds of stations, dozens of colonies, all departed in near silence. The galaxy felt empty. Space stations designed for human crews rattled with abandonment. Trade routes once bustling with human transport showed no traffic. Colonies that had relied on human services struggled with basic needs. The Council had not realized how much humans did, how many gaps they filled, how much invisible work kept civilization running. President Helen Brooks gave a single public address before she left. She stood in the United Earth Government building and spoke directly to the camera. Her words were measured and calm, but underneath ran a current of cold anger. We tried to be good galactic citizens. We followed your rules. We paid your taxes. We worked your jobs. We died defending your worlds. You treated us as servants and we endured it, hoping to prove ourselves worthy of respect. New Denver taught us the truth. You will never respect us. You will never see us as equals. You will only see us as useful tools. So we are leaving. We are taking our tools with us. Figure out how to build your own. She cut the transmission. Within a week, Earth itself was gone. Not the planet, of course, but every human on it. The Council sent observers to investigate. They found Earth empty. Cities stood intact but unpopulated. Lights were off. Streets were silent. Humanity had taken everything portable and left. The observers wandered through empty buildings and felt a strange unease. An entire species had just walked away from its homeworld to start over somewhere else. The Council tried to track where humanity went. Long-range sensors showed human ships heading into the outer darkness. Then the signals faded. The humans had disappeared. The Council debated sending scout ships to follow, but decided against it. Let them go. They would probably fail out there. The outer rim was harsh. Humans would come crawling back eventually, begging to be readmitted. The Council would accept them, of course, but on even stricter terms. That was the assumption. The Council returned to business as usual. They believed the crisis would pass. Other species could be trained to do human work. Systems could be redesigned to function without human maintenance. Trade routes could be adjusted. Everything would be fine. They were completely wrong. The problem started small. A power grid failed on a Korvax industrial world. Engineers tried to restart it using the maintenance protocols in their files. The protocols were incomplete. Humans had updated and improved the systems over decades, but they had kept those improvements in their heads or in personal notes. The written documentation was outdated. The engineers struggled for days before getting the grid partially functional. Production dropped 30%. A medical crisis hit Fenari space. A common virus mutated into something deadly. Normally, Dr. Nina Clark and her team would have identified it and developed a treatment within days. But Nina was gone. The Fenari physicians tried, but they lacked experience with rapidly mutating diseases. They had relied on human expertise for so long that their own skills had atrophied. The plague spread. Thousands died. Tens of thousands more fell ill. The medical system collapsed under the strain. Trade routes through the Corvin Nebula became impassable. Human navigators had charted safe paths through the dense gas clouds and magnetic storms. The charts existed, but reading them required understanding human notation systems and making real-time adjustments based on conditions. Other species tried. Ships got lost. Some were never found. Merchants began routing around the nebula, adding weeks to journey times and driving up costs. The Vorath held emergency economic meetings. Trade was slowing. Costs were rising. Critical goods were not reaching their destinations. They tried hiring other species to replace human workers. The pay rates needed to be 5 times higher to get anyone willing to do dangerous jobs. Even then, the workers lacked human efficiency and adaptability. What humans had done with small teams now required large crews at much greater expense. Food shortages hit the Dramathi home worlds. The underwater agricultural stations had been operated by human technicians who understood the complex balance of nutrients, temperature, and currents. The Dramathi tried running the stations themselves. The first harvest was 30% below normal. The second harvest failed completely. Algae blooms poisoned entire crop zones. The Dramathi faced potential famine. They tried to buy food from other sources, but supply chains were disrupted everywhere. On frontier worlds, pirate attacks increased. The Zulak military was supposed to protect those regions. In practice, they focused on important targets and ignored minor colonies. Humans had filled that gap with volunteer militia patrols. Now there were no patrols. Raiders struck with impunity. Colonies fell silent. Distress calls went unanswered because there was no one left to answer them. The great fusion reactors began failing across Council space. These massive installations powered entire planets. They needed constant maintenance by skilled technicians. Danny Walsh and thousands of humans like him had kept them running smoothly for decades. They made it look easy because they were that good. Now the reactors were running on outdated maintenance schedules. Systems overheated, coolant systems clogged, safety protocols triggered shutdowns. Rolling blackouts swept across core worlds that had not experienced power failures in centuries. The Council tried to fix things. The Vorath threw money at problems. The Korvax built new automated systems. The Zulak deployed military engineers. Nothing worked. The issues were too widespread, too interconnected. Civilization was a machine with thousands of parts, and humans had been maintaining most of those parts. Without them, the machine was grinding to a halt. A Kelsier geneticist named Varric studied the problem. She had worked alongside human researchers for years. She realized something the Council refused to see. Humans were not just laborers. They were problem solvers. They innovated constantly, finding better ways to do things. They adapted to changing conditions. They took broken systems and made them work. That adaptability was their real value, and it could not be easily replaced. Varric presented her findings to the Kelsier leadership. They dismissed her concerns. Humans were a lesser species. Their contributions were being exaggerated. Any short-term disruptions would be resolved. Varric stopped arguing. She was smart enough to see where things were heading. The Council was failing. 16 months after humanity departed, the first Council member broke away. A collection of Fenari colonies declared independence, forming their own federation. They had depended heavily on human services. Without those services, the Council offered them nothing but taxes and regulations. Why stay? Other colonies watched this rebellion carefully. The Council was too busy dealing with crises to respond effectively. The Theln telepaths reported something disturbing. They could feel a shift in galactic consciousness. Fear was growing. Uncertainty spreading. The old order was crumbling. People no longer trusted the Council to protect them or provide for them. The psychological foundation of 10,000 years of government was cracking. Council meetings became shouting matches. The Vorath blamed the Zulak for not stopping the human exodus. The Zulak blamed the Kelsier for the policies that drove humans away. The Kelsier blamed everyone else for being weak. The Dramathi calculated that the council had perhaps 5 years before total economic collapse. The Finari tried to negotiate unity, but their diplomatic skills were useless when no one wanted to listen. Thora was a young Vorith administrator who had worked with humans throughout her career. She saw things older members refused to see. Humans had not been servants. They had been partners who were never treated as such. The council had built an empire on a foundation of human labor and goodwill, then kicked that foundation repeatedly. Now they were surprised the building was falling down. Thora tried to propose reforms, full membership for any species that wanted it, equal rights regardless of origin, real representation in government. The council rejected her proposals. The elder species had ruled for 10,000 years. They would not share power with younger races. Thora left the meeting frustrated and angry. The council would rather collapse than change. 3 years after humanity left, system-wide failures cascaded across council space. A mineral shortage shut down manufacturing worlds. Energy shortages forced populations to evacuate planets. Communication networks fragmented when relay stations failed. Medical crises erupted with no one able to respond. Pirate fleets controlled entire sectors. Some council worlds stopped paying taxes. Others ignored council edicts. The central government became irrelevant. Selix, a Kelsier scientist, gathered data on the collapse. The numbers were stark. Before human departure, the council economy had been growing steadily. After departure, it fell into recession, then depression, then freefall. Deaths from preventable causes increased by 300%. Industrial production dropped 60%. Agricultural output was down 40%. Trade volume had collapsed. The most advanced civilization in the galaxy was dying. Kren was a Zulak warrior who had fought alongside humans during border conflicts. He knew their worth as soldiers and friends. He watched the council's decline with sadness. The humans had been treated like garbage and responded by leaving. They had not attacked. They had not destroyed anything. They had just walked away. Yet their absence was destroying the council more effectively than any war. Kren proposed a radical idea. Send a delegation to find humanity, apologize, offer full membership. Beg them to come back, help fix this disaster. The council debated for months. Pride fought against practicality. Eventually, desperation won. A delegation would be sent. Thora, Selix, and Kren were chosen to lead it. They were younger, more open-minded, and had positive relationships with humans. They were given a fast ship and told to find humanity, wherever they had gone. The mission was simple. Bring them back, whatever it takes. The 3 delegates prepared carefully. They studied human culture and history. They gathered data on New Denver and other injustices. They practiced apologies. They genuinely wanted to make things right. But they also knew they might be too late. Humanity had been gone for years. Who knew what they had become? The ship departed, heading toward the outer rim. The journey took months following faint traces of human passage. Old sensor readings, abandoned waypoints, fragments of communications. The delegates pushed deeper into uncharted space, into regions the council had dismissed as worthless. They found signs of activity, strange energy signatures, new structures that were not there in old survey data. Something was happening out here. Something big. The delegates pressed forward, excited and nervous. They were about to discover what humanity had built in exile. What they found shocked them beyond words. The first thing they saw was a massive space station, far larger than anything in council space. It bristled with technology both familiar and strange. Around it floated hundreds of ships, some human designs but others completely unknown. They requested permission to dock. After a tense wait, permission was granted. The delegates landed in a busy hangar filled with beings of different species. Some human, yes, but many others. Species the delegates did not recognize, all working together, talking, laughing. It looked like the council's vision of galactic cooperation, except it actually worked. A human officer met them. She introduced herself as Commander Lisa Hayes, now serving as Defense Minister for something called the Frontier Alliance. She escorted the delegates through the station, showing them. Admiral Carl Burton looked at the 3 delegates with tired eyes. He had lived through so much pain and disappointment. New Denver haunted him still. The faces of people he could not save appeared in his dreams. He had watched the council ignore humanity for decades, and then abandon them completely when they needed help most. Now these delegates sat in his conference room, representing the government that had let 400,000 humans die. Thora spoke first. She was nervous but determined. She explained that the council was collapsing. Systems were failing. People were dying. Entire sectors were falling into chaos. The council had made terrible mistakes, she admitted. They had treated humanity unfairly. They had failed to help New Denver. They were sorry. Truly sorry. They needed humanity to come back. Not as servants, but as full equals. Full voting rights. Full representation. Whatever humanity wanted. Please just help save the galaxy. Selleck's added data. He showed graphs of economic collapse, medical crises, infrastructure failures. He explained how human absence had revealed how dependent the council had been on human labor and expertise. He called it a catastrophic oversight. The council had taken humanity for granted. They realized that now. They wanted to make it right. Kren spoke simply. He had fought beside humans. He knew their courage and honor. He was ashamed of how his government had treated them. He would understand if humanity refused, but he hoped they might forgive. The galaxy needed them. Admiral Burton listened to it all without expression. When they finished, he stood and activated a holographic display. Images filled the room. Recordings of distress calls from New Denver. Commander Lisa Hayes begging for help. The cold responses from council officials. The timestamps showing that help could have arrived in time but was never sent. More images appeared. Peter Grant making requests for fair treatment, all denied. Human workers being exploited. Human colonies being taxed into poverty. Human voices being ignored. Decades of documentation showing systematic discrimination. The delegates watched in silence. They knew the history, but seeing it laid out so starkly was painful. The display showed the aftermath of New Denver. Burned cities. Mass graves. Children who had lost their parents. Survivors with empty eyes. Admiral Burton finally spoke. His voice was quiet but heavy with old grief. You taught us a valuable lesson. You taught us that seeking approval from those who despise you is foolish. You taught us that we are better off building something new than fixing something rotten. You taught us that we do not need you. Commander Lisa Hayes stood. Her scars from New Denver were visible on her face and arms. She looked at each delegate directly. We buried 400,000 people because you could not be bothered to help. We will never forget that. We will never forgive that. My friends died. My family died. They died screaming into communicators, begging the Great Galactic Council for help. You let them die because we were not important enough. The delegates wanted to argue, to explain, but Lisa's pain was too raw. Selleck tried anyway. We were not the ones who made those decisions. That was the older generation. We are different. We want to fix things. Captain Jake Cooper shook his head. He had spent his whole life serving the council faithfully. Flying dangerous routes, delivering supplies, helping whoever needed it. He had believed that hard work and good deeds would earn humanity respect. New Denver had destroyed that belief. You are not different. You are just desperate. If the council was still strong, you would not be here. You would still be ignoring us just like always. You do not want us back because you respect us. You want us back because you need us. Admiral Burton continued the presentation. The hologram showed what humanity had found in the outer rim. Species the council had dismissed as primitive or worthless. The Tarkin, who created incredible art. The Gen, who were mathematical geniuses. The Sur, who thrived in environments other species could not survive. 23 species total, all rejected by the council. All thriving now in the Frontier Alliance. The delegates stared. They recognized some of these species from old survey reports. Races that had been evaluated and deemed not suitable for uplift or insufficient technological development, or simply not worth the effort. The council had left them alone to struggle. Humanity had found them and offered partnership, Admiral Burton explained. When humans fled council space, they were angry and hurt, but they were also determined to build something better. They explored the regions the council had ignored. They found other abandoned species. They offered friendship with no strings attached, help with no expectations of servitude, partnership based on mutual respect. The Tarkin had been barely spacefaring when humans arrived. Now they built some of the finest ships in the Frontier Alliance. The Gen had been stuck on their home world. Now their mathematicians helped design jump drive improvements that made travel faster and safer. Every species contributed something valuable. Every species had a voice. It was everything the Galactic Council claimed to be but never was. President Marcus Lane spoke for the first time. He was calm and measured. We created something here, something we are proud of, a true federation of equals. No one is classified as lesser. No one is denied voting rights. No one is told they are not ready for full membership. We have problems, yes. Building a new civilization is hard. But it is our civilization. We built it together. And it works. Thora felt hope dying. She had come expecting to find desperate refugees who would jump at any chance to return. Instead, she found a successful society that had moved beyond the council. Please, millions are suffering in council space. We need your help. Commander Lisa Hayes laughed bitterly. Millions suffered when New Denver fell. Where was your concern then? People are dying without medical care. Human doctors could have saved them, but you said human medical practices were inferior. Systems are failing. Human engineers maintained them for decades while you took credit. Trade routes are impassable. Human pilots flew them every day while you collected taxes on their cargo. You built an empire on our backs and kicked us when we asked for respect. Selix tried a different approach. If you come back, you can reform the council from within. Change the policies. Create the equality you want. Admiral Carl Burton shook his head. We tried that for 200 years. Peter Grant spent his entire life trying to reform the council. He filed reports. He made proposals. He pleaded for fair treatment. The council ignored him. Even after New Denver, when we showed you proof of your failures, you told us it was our fault for building in the wrong place. You cannot reform something that refuses to change. Kren stood. The big Zulak warrior looked uncomfortable. We made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But does that mean you will let the galaxy burn? Innocent people are suffering who had nothing to do with council policies. Captain Jake Cooper considered this. It was a fair point. Many individuals in council space were not responsible for government actions, but he remembered all the times those individuals had benefited from human labor while treating human workers poorly. He remembered aliens who had looked down on him even as he delivered supplies that kept them alive. We are not letting the galaxy burn. We are letting the Galactic Council face the consequences of its choices. That is different. The room fell silent. The delegates realized they were failing. Humanity was not coming back. President Lane stood and walked to the window. Outside, the space station bustled with activity. Ships came and went. People of different species worked side by side. You want to know something interesting? We are the same distance from Earth as the Council worlds. We just went in a different direction. This region you thought was worthless? It is rich in resources and habitable planets. You did a survey 500 years ago, found no easy pickings, and never came back. You missed all of this because you were too lazy to look deeper. He turned back to the delegates. The Frontier Alliance is growing. We have 60 systems now. More species are joining every year. Not because we offer them power or wealth, but because we offer them respect. We treat everyone as equals from day one. No probationary periods. No classifications of lesser species. Just partnership. Admiral Burton added, in 5 years we will be larger than the Council. In 10, we will be the dominant power in this part of the galaxy. We do not need the Council. The Council needed us and realized it too late. Thora felt tears forming. Her species did not cry often, but she felt the urge. So that is it? You will just watch us collapse? After everything we built together? Lisa Hayes responded sharply. We did not build it together. We built it for you while you took credit. There is a difference. She softened slightly. Look, we are not monsters. We will not attack Council space. We will not raid your worlds. We will even send medical supplies for humanitarian reasons if you ask. But we will not come back. We will not save your government. We will not maintain your systems. You are on your own now. The delegates sat in stunned silence. Their mission had failed completely. Kren asked one final question. What should we tell the Council? Admiral Carl Burton thought carefully. He wanted his words to be clear. Tell them this. The Galactic Council ruled for 10,000 years and learned nothing about honor, compassion, or cooperation. You sat in your comfortable chambers while others did the hard work. You took credit for